Hello, welcome to my new 3 Seasons porch. We just moved. It was exhausting. But now we're in this beautiful porch area and I love this view. It's very, very artistic, I feel. The one light is giving me enough light so you can see me, so that's why I'm sitting like this. Okay, this is the part of class where I would say, okay, ask me anything about the first speech that'll help you calm down or be happy or not be so anxious. And then you would ask me a bunch of questions. Some of you have emailed me, some of you have posted on the discussion board, and also I have roughly 12 years of students asking me questions. So what you didn't ask, I can fill in case, like, oh yeah, I did want to know that and I forgot to ask. So we'll do that. The main overview of this video, which I usually do this on some of the first days, but it's just a lot harder online, right? But like, we really have this idea of what a good speech is, okay? What a good or a right speech is. And many of your questions circulate around this idea of how to do it right? How to do it, how to be a good speech, how to do it right. And then the reason you want to know how to do it right and how to have a good speech is so that you don't do it bad or do it wrong. Does that make sense? Okay, so guess what I'm going to do right now for this class. For the rest of the class, we are going to get rid of these. So I usually cross these off on the board, and I'm not going to rip them up because I want to still refer to them. And I want you to see, look here, that right and wrong and good and bad don't exist. They don't exist in the world of speech. Now, in some worlds, these do exist. These binaries do exist. I often think of nursing. There is a right way to put a needle in an arm. Now, there might be multiple right ways, but there is a right way to do it, which means there's wrong ways. And the reason I know there are wrong ways is because I've had it done badly, right? I've had friends who taught nursing and they would say, yeah, the test is like, that's what we go by. There are right and wrong answers because it's a matter of life and death, right? Public speaking isn't like that. It's just not. It's not about right and wrong. Some of you have asked me very specific questions, like, is this a good topic? Which of these topics is better? And I'm like, I don't know. There's a lot of thought that goes into that, and that might be a different answer for every person and every context, right? And what if I do it bad? What if I do it wrong? It's like, this doesn't exist, okay? So we're getting rid of these. So what do we have instead, right? Well, what we have instead is effective. This is our goal. We want it to be effective. Or the other word I sometimes use is justified, right? So what's going to work? What's going to be effective? And a lot of times the things that we're taking into account to try to determine whether something is effective, right? We've talked a lot about the audience, right? We want to be taking the audience into account. We also want to be taking context clues into account. And the material, right? And then, of course, you are the one that's putting all of these together. You are the one that's crafting, right? Craft, my favorite word. My favorite word, do. Okay, so how do I know how to do this? How do I know what's justified? Well, critical thinking. That's how. Critical thinking. That's how we know. That's the tool we're using to try to figure out what works. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through some of these, and then you're going to have to do this for your own speech and any question that comes up. Now, you can always still email me. I'm happy to walk through this with you. It's just I'm not an oracle and I won't give you a straight answer. You can ask people who've emailed me and they'll say, what should I do? And I'll say, I don't know. And then I'll walk them through it. So because then the reason I don't know, right, is because there is no good and bad. There you go. Okay, does that make sense? No good, no bad. So you're not going to do it wrong. You're not going to do this first speech wrong. You can't. It doesn't exist. Okay, so what you're working for is thinking through your choices so that it's going to be effective for the audience, the time, etc. Okay, so let's think about some of the things people have asked then. Somebody emailed me about verbal citations. Now, usually somebody asks, do I have to cite my sources in my speech? Yes, 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 yes. And here's why. It's not just a magic yes because the teacher wants it. It's because otherwise you'd be taking somebody's work and passing it off as your own. So there's two reasons. Does anybody know the two reasons why we cite citations in our speeches? Anytime you're citing a source, anytime you're referencing a resource or any kind of information, why are you citing? Some of you said to give credit. I bet somebody said to give credit, right? That's the main reason, to give credit. If I say something smart and witty, but actually my best friend said it, I'm going to give credit to my best friend. I'm going to be like, well, she said it, right? So give credit. And then the other reason, this one's kind of weird, is so that you can find it again. Whether you want to check that source or whether you want to use that source, you want to give enough information when you cite a source so that your audience could find it. Now, that's pretty easy in the age of the internet, okay? So those are the two main reasons you cite. To give credit and to be able to find it again. Now, I will go in some other time about the different reasons we have different citations, MLA, APA, Chicago style. When you're verbally citing something, those don't matter as much. Those are going to matter because you're going to need a reference page or a works cited on your outline, right? The thing you turn in that you spoke from. You're going to want to cite your sources in a format. Don't just give me links. Don't do it. Right? But you're going to cite your sources in a format. But when you're citing them in a speech, you just need to worry about these two things. So somebody will say, okay, can I just say according to the author? Do I have to include the date? Do I have to include the journal it came from? Do I have to, so, right? Like, what pieces do I include? Well, depends what the source is. Depends what your goal is. If it's really important that this author said it because they're like giving an expert testimony, you're going to make sure to include the author. If it's from a source like the Washington Post, the author may not matter as much. It may matter that it's from the Washington Post. You might just say, an article in the Washington Post said, and that might be enough, right? Is the article title important? You may not need the title, or that might be a really important piece to cite, right? To give explanation to what you're citing and why you're citing. My cat Titus has just crawled out onto the porch for the first time. And he's sniffing around and it's pretty great. Here, you probably need to see him. Whoa. He's checking everything out. Okay, so, this chair tips. This is the grandma chair. There we go. Okay, so it's called that because it used to be Matthew's grandma's. Okay, so as long as you're doing those two things. Now, some people will be like, but I don't want to cite all the time. It's like, well, you have to craft that in there and weave those sources in, but you can't tell me information that you got from somewhere and then not cite it. That would be like, you're with your squad, right? Remember your squad. So you're with your squad and then you just start talking and your squad's like, excuse me, I said, I told you that. And you're like, shush, 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 shush. And you don't reference them. You don't give them credit. You're like a jerk face who like speaks and says other people's words. Gross. We don't want to do that. So the other thing is I will know that that's happening. I love when people stand up and they'll say something very historical like, George Washington had a pimple on his face and he ate an apple on a Tuesday. And I'll be like, how do you know that? He was born on blah, 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 blah. And then they won't cite anything. And I'll be like, you don't know that. I don't believe for 1 second you know that. So anything that you're citing or anything that you're finding that you're sharing information with us, make sure not only you're gifting it to us, but you're telling us how we got it. Now, some people worry about that getting repetitive. That's where crafting comes in. There's a bunch of different ways to verbally cite sources. You can weave around your words. You can, put it before or after. You can give different information. Think of it like, again, you're the person crafting it, and how is it going to help your audience hear the information and hear where it's from? That's really what you're trying to do, okay? So you want to make sure to cite your sources. You want to make sure that on your outline, whatever you speak from has your cited references, works cited, and you can do that in APA or MLA. I doubt many of you will use Chicago, but you can do that if you want. Okay, so verbal citations. Somebody asked about sides. If you're presenting different information about your topic, you know, how do I craft that or how do I say that? My big thing here is I have kind of a rant. I don't think topics have sides. I think we boil them down to binaries, pro-life and pro-choice. But I think that this just the sides, right, of, you know, pro-life and pro-choice, not everybody's included in that. It's actually multiple perspectives. So I draw this on the board, right? I draw two halves, okay? But then really there's all these little perspectives and it's not just two sides. So instead of talking about sides, you're always wanting to reference that as information, right? You're always going to want to say, you know, some individuals, you know, believe or argue this, and then you would cite somebody or cite a source talking about that perspective, you know, whereas others talk about this. Some people talk about this. Now, you might have two main perspectives you're talking about, but I would be careful calling it sides, unless you're referencing like this has become a sided argument, such as gun control. Even though there's multiple different perspectives, these are the two that sort of stick out. I mean, you could reference that, just as long as you're not making it seem like those are the only two options to believe about a topic, because there aren't. I can't think of any topic where there's only two things to think about it, right? But in terms of presenting that, I think the question was getting at presenting it, and my side rant was just a bonus. Feel free to talk about that sort of however you want, right? If you want to explain it out that way, great. If you would rather just say, you know, this group of people think this group of people thinks this, as long as you're referencing those people and arguments and perspectives, and you're not saying, well, I believe this and you should believe this, like, because that's persuasive, right? And we also don't really want to know what you think. You know, it can't be like these people say this, but these people are smart and they say this, right? So again, you're just trying to, and remember, if you tell me that like the Westboro Baptist Church believes that, you know, all fags should go to hell. If you tell me that, you don't need to tell me that that's bigoted. I know that's bigoted, right? And you can immediately say that others think that's bigoted, but you don't have to be like, isn't that crazy? Or that's so bad. Like, you don't have to commentate on that, right? The other kind of with that idea of like how to talk, somebody asked about like, you know, how formal does something have to be? Specifically in language use, and they actually specifically asked about personal experience, which I'll talk in a second. But just in terms of language, you're thinking about communicating. So a lot of times we think speeches have to be super formal and people's voices change and they talk kind of like a robot and they read. And I don't want to say that that's bad, because there is no bad, right? No bad. But I think often that's not super justified, right? Or that's not super effective in communicating. Talk to us like it's you and think about how you would best communicate this informative information. Now, if the best way to do that is a personal experience gets fuzzy for a couple of reasons. And there's no, again, because there's no right or wrong, I can't say, oh, never use it or always use it, right? So there's two things I think to keep in mind, 2 to 3 things to keep in mind about personal experience. The first is, if you can find something better, sometimes that works better. Because when you're using personal experience, you're really relying on your ethos or your story. And if it's a general story that lots of people can relate to, you might do better doing an imagination or telling a more interesting testimony, right? So the example I always give here is, and be brave, I'm going to talk about my own life and it gets real dramatic real quick. My dad died of a brain tumor no one has ever had before. And so, like, that's not something I'm making up, that's just real. They've found this type of tumor before in the body. It's pretty rare, but they have never found this type of tumor in this part of the brain before. He's the only one that's ever had it. He's famous in medical journals. And so That's sorry, my cat is sniffing me, so I want to tell him everything's okay with ugh. So that's a great example of like if I was going to talk about cancer, it's not just oh I've had some family members die of cancer. I mean I had my dad die of something that literally no person's ever had before. So that's a very interesting personal experience, right? And I don't think it's or I think it's hard to find other examples of that. Um, Another time personal experience works great is if you're trying to get your audience to empathize and they trust you, that might be a great time to talk about personal experience. Um, it can be a great attention getter, talking about your own experience. It can be really resonant with the audience. Sometimes it can be stuff we already know, or sometimes it can feel like you're just telling us your story and it's not really impacting us. So that's something to think about. Um, the other thing is it can be persuasive. So you have to kind of be careful when you're using it in an informative because you don't want to start with sort of a big emotional sob story and then you've sort of given away your hand as to how you feel or what you believe. If you can kind of leave it up to like, here's just the experience, that's certainly one thing, but you may want to save your personal experience for a more persuasive speech because that's going to potentially have some persuasive value to it and maybe some really powerful persuasive value because it's you, right? Does that make sense? Um, Personal experience, casual, talk sides. So then people will ask, what should I wear? I'm always like, clothes? um, the way you would figure out these questions usually is by thinking through the context. Now, this is a bit more difficult in a class because I have assigned a lot of the context. I told you how long it had to be. I told you what type of topic it should be. I told you how many sources you needed. I mean, I was kind of bossy, right? Usually, I mean, sometimes you'll get some guidelines, but usually you're not going to have someone, and I'm grading you if you do all these things, like usually the context is more open. And so no one's going to tell you what to wear usually. You're going to figure it out based on context. Some of my favorite stories about this, right? I did an advanced public speaking class once, and this girl, she was a forensicator, so she had done competitive speech in high school, and she always wore a suit, always, always, always wore a suit to every single speech she ever did. Even if it was on a Monday morning at 8 a.m., she would show up in full hose, full suit all the time. And I knew that she did this. And so we did a funny speech in this advanced public speaking class, and her topic was on Star Trek. So she showed up in her full suit, gave her speech, and she was really talented. So it was really funny and really good. And they were doing critiques afterwards, and someone just casually said, it's too bad that she doesn't have like a Star Trek shirt that she could have worn. And you just saw her whole face. She just was like, oh, of course she has a Star Trek shirt. She's got a red shirt with a little, thing. Like she totally has a Star Trek costume at home. She loves Star Trek. And she just felt like such an idiot because in her head it was like full suit. That's a speech, full suit. And she didn't think critically through, well, this particular speech is a particular topic and it would benefit from a different outfit choice, right? Same thing, like if you're going to go speak to a bunch of high schoolers, you may not want to wear a full suit. You may want to wear jeans, right? Like you may want to wear something that's going to like speak to them or give credibility to them. Now, you don't want to try to not be yourself. I have another story about a student who made it into a semester speech contest. And she showed up to the semifinals wearing a polo shirt. She always wore like boots and wrap skirts, and she had big curly hair and scarves, and I adored her, thought she was excellent. And she showed up wearing khakis and this polo shirt, and she looked like this. And I was like, what are you wearing? And she goes, I thought we had to dress up. I borrowed my roommate's clothes. And I was like, oh God, okay. You look so uncomfortable. And she's like, I am. If you try to wear something that you think like this is what we should wear for a speech, like you're probably not going to be comfortable, right? Think through what works for you. She made it to the finals. She was excellent. She showed up wearing boots and like a jumper wrap thing. She looked so much more comfortable and she won. I was like, there we go. That's what we're talking about. And so you want to be thinking through, you don't want to wear something that's going to be inappropriate or offensive. I don't really like the term inappropriate, but like, because that's laced often with sexism and racism, and it's like, oh, women shouldn't wear too short of clothes. It's like, who's making those rules? Or you want to wear something flattering for your body, right? Like, so, but you may not want to wear your pajamas unless your topic is about sleep, and then your pajamas might be perfect, right? Because remember, it's all about, uh-oh, I'm losing my, it's all about what's effective, right? It's all about what's justified. It's all about critically thinking through the choices. Can I use a podium? Does that work best for you? What are you speaking off of? If you've got thick cards like this, you probably don't need a podium, right? You probably just use your cards. If you've got sheets of paper, your paper is going to flap everywhere, and you probably need something to set it on. Do I introduce myself? I don't think you need to in this class. We've already met you. We saw an intro video. But if that makes you more comfortable, if you think that works with your topic, go ahead and introduce yourself. I don't personally think it's necessary in this context, but especially because most of the time when you're speaking, someone else will introduce you before you start. But that may be, what you think works best. I'm just critical when someone says, so like I've heard public speaking teachers say, always dress up. First of all, what does that mean? Or always use note cards, or never use note cards. Anytime someone's telling you always, never, that's not good, right? That's just shutting down critical thinking, and we want to be thinking about what works best in a context. If they say, you should always introduce yourself, always. And it's like, or you maybe have a bomb attention getter, and saying your name will ruin that. I've seen amazing attention getters. I saw a man one time speak. He started by playing the harmonica, and he just started wailing on the harmonica in front of this huge crowd. And if he had stood up and said, "Hi, my name is Adam Fink, and I'm going to play the harmonica for you," that would have ruined everything, right? And he just started wailing, and that was way better to start his speech. So think through these things. There's a bunch of other ones, right, that people will ask, do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Should I do this? You want to just sit and think through what's going to work best, what is effective, and then, you know what? You're kind of in a safe space. I mean, sure, there's a grade attached, but like, you're not going to lose your job. None of your family's going to get hurt. There's no huge, terrible consequence. Try something. If it doesn't work out, I mean, you're not going to fail. You did the speech. You're not going to get 0 points. I don't do that. So, try it out. And if it doesn't work, you'll learn from it. That's my motto there. Okay? So, and then somebody asked a very good logistic question. Do we record it ourselves and then upload it to GoReact, or do we just do it on GoReact? So I sent an email explaining this, but GoReact, I can set you a video. So I have all your videos set up in GoReact, and when you are ready to record, just find your name and video, hit record, and go. The reason I think we should try to do it that way is to mimic live class. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll try to record it 10 different times. And you'll try over and over, and it won't be the right time, and it won't be the right this, and you'll mess up, so you'll start over. We don't want that. One, it's going to take you too long. You don't need that stress in your life. Girl, brush that off. You don't need that. Secondly, we want to mimic what it's like to do live speaking, and live speaking isn't like that. You don't get to start over and over. If you mess up in the middle, you're going to go and then go back and either start over or fix it or do whatever. Lots of people will say sorry. I don't think you need to say sorry. I think you can just pause and keep going. Yeah, it's live. Pretend it's live. And if that makes you nervous, it's one shot, man, and you'll do it, and maybe you won't be super satisfied, but that's the learning process. Maybe you'll think it's awesome, but you don't want to spend 2 hours trying to re-record different versions. Trust me, I've been there. You don't want to do that. So just try to do one shot. It's your one chance. I'm gonna take my shot. I was doing Eminem and Hamilton, and neither of it worked out well. So you can, I was doing not throwing away my shot, and I was also doing don't miss your one shot. Got there's a chance of not. You might be too young for that. Okay, anyway, that's Eminem. Hopefully that helps. This got a little long, but hopefully it was entertaining watching my cat jump around. Jump around, jump around. Okay, I'm overtired. Gotta go. I appreciate you all. You got more questions, email me, but hopefully this helps.